Hi, I am Sashwati Sarkar, and you're watching The Times of India. Every year, thousands of students chase the Ivy League dream without really knowing what they are signing up for. Starting from choosing between Harvard and Princeton to figuring out whether US is worth the cost over UK, there's a lot that goes unsaid in the study abroad conversation. To unravel all of it and answer the tough questions, today we have with us someone who has been on both sides, an Ivy Leaguer himself and a mentor to hundreds. Meet Mr. Rahul Subramanian, co-founder of Athena Education and a Princeton alum. Welcome to the show, Rahul. The first question that we come to is, everyone talks about getting into the Ivy League, and you have helped so many do that. But what's your personal filter? Like, who, according to you, shouldn't aim for an Ivy League?
I think that's a great question. See, college is a stepping stone to a successful and fulfilling life.
Right.
And every month we get students who've been studying for IIT for 2, 3, 4 years. Kids are starting in middle school nowadays. And when they come to us, we tell them, hey, you worked really hard on this. Why would you switch gears when you're likely to get into a good program in one of the IITs? It's such a respectable brand, not just in India, but globally. So do that and then maybe consider studying abroad for your master's degree. So one, if you're doing very well in IIT JEE, for AIMS, for medicine, for law, it might make sense to do it in India and then seek a postgraduate degree abroad. That would be number one. Number two, if finances are a concern, there are some universities like Harvard, Yale, Princeton who offer need-blind financial aid, which means that it doesn't matter what your family can pay. If they can pay full, then the colleges will expect you to pay full. If not, they'll subsidize to a large extent. But that's not the case with some of the other elite universities. So if finances are a concern, it might make sense to look at other options, whether in continental Europe, which is really picking up a lot of English language programs are sprouting up in Germany, in the Netherlands, of course in the UK and Ireland, but also in East Asia. We've had some students study in Japan and South Korea. There are some English language programs there, and these are universities that are producing engineers for the Toyotas and Hyundais of the world, the Sonys and Samsungs of the world. There's also Hong Kong and Singapore, which are also native English programs. So students should consider these as well if finances are a factor. And then number three would be if they have very specific educational objectives. For example, they want to study design. Then maybe a design school like RISD or Parsons would make more sense than Ivy. Or if they want to study sports management, a highly specialized course of study, or even engineering, a Carnegie Mellon or even a Georgia Tech might make more sense than an Ivy where engineering is not the focus.
What's the one thing about Ivy League life that most Indian aspirants romanticize about but shouldn't?
Well, I will say that, most people getting into top universities are used to being at the top of their high school batch, right? They're doing very well academically. They're being celebrated by teachers and administrators. And all of a sudden they get to a Princeton or a Harvard or Yale or an MIT, and they're in the 60th percentile, and they see all these people who are far more accomplished and capable than they. So sometimes that can lead to a crisis of identity, like, oh my God, I'm not good enough. And how one should respond is, wow, I'm part of this amazing community of extremely accomplished and capable young people. Let me try to soak up as much gyan, as many skills as possible. So, but a lot of people struggle with that. And a lot of people, some people drop out or need to get back on track. So managing your emotions, not just the intellectual load, but the emotional and social load is something that I wish someone told me about previously. The other thing I'll mention is that whether it's with the Ivies or IIT or IIM or any elite college tag, sometimes a lot of graduates assume, okay, now everyone should roll out the red carpet for me, and things will get easier. It definitely gives you a platform. It definitely gives you a foot in the door and access, but you still got to grind and you still got to prove yourself in many situations. So with your work consistently over time, produce quality work consistently over time. And putting in that grind is sometimes difficult because you kind of have assumptions and expectations about the world that are not entirely correct.
Great, great to hear that. It's really, really insightful. And actually, students, they already have a very starry-eyed vision of studying, in the US, and the green is always greener on the other side. So some reality check should be there.
Yes.
Yeah. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Columbia. 4 different Ivies, 4 different vibes.
Mm-hmm.
What are the key academic and cultural differences between these Ivy Leagues?
Good. I think there are more similarities than differences, but if we were to pick that apart, Harvard definitely has a legendary brand, very big on leadership. Princeton too, leadership, policy, but there's a little more of an academic flair at Princeton. Virtually every student has to complete a senior thesis with the guidance of a professor. So a lot of emphasis on primary research. Yale has this artsy flair. There are a bunch of notable Hollywood actors who went to Yale. So there's this creative flair, in addition to, of course, the leadership, policy, and academia. Columbia has an activist culture. Now, being in New York City, being in such a cosmopolitan location, I think the other universities do activism in a different way. It's more through policy, it's more through thought, as opposed to getting out on the street. So these are some of the differences. That said, every university wants diversity.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And diversity comes in many forms, of course, race, religion, gender, but beyond that, they want diversity of academic aspirations and diversity of perspectives as well. So while there are cultural norms for each university, there's something for everyone. And I think wherever you go, you need to find your tribe that really helps you succeed and helps you find fulfillment.
Great, great. So my next question is very simple, but I am hoping to get a very how do I explain it? The answer that I'm expecting should be very well informed and very, very useful to our audience.
Great.
What are the best countries now for studying medicine abroad?
Understood. So just as a caveat, if you've already been preparing for Indian medicine, Indian medical colleges are excellent. So I wouldn't advocate changing tracks willy-nilly, because what you need to do to get into a top Indian medical program is so different from what you have to do to get into a top medical program abroad. So with that caveat, the UK is the obvious destination. The big difference here between the US and the UK is that the US does not offer an undergraduate medical program. So you have to major in biology. You can even major in English. It doesn't matter. You typically have to take 7 to 8 pre-med courses. Now, you can major in anything. Again, biology, English, history, philosophy, does not matter, as long as you take those core 8 courses. And then you have to apply for medical programs at the postgraduate level in the US. In the UK, you go straight there. Canada is more like the US in most cases. Australia is becoming a more popular destination, similar to the UK. A couple of universities in Ireland. Ireland is emerging as this tech hub as well, due to some new policy infrastructure. So that's becoming increasingly popular. And I've heard of Germany as well, although the language barrier is a factor, but
Right.
that is significantly subsidized. So if you're a younger student, right, you're in 9th grade, and perhaps you have a choice to study Hindi or Spanish or German, I would consider German and really get good at that, because that might open a whole bunch of quality, affordable options in continental Europe.
Great, great. So what are the best universities to study liberal arts abroad?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so about the liberal arts first, I think the liberal arts are we love the liberal arts, but it's a double-edged sword, and I think in this day and age of AI and so on, it's going to be so important for humans to to be interdisciplinary, to identify connections between technology and business and the humanities. For example, even if you're building tech products, you need to understand art and design for UI UX. You need to understand philosophy for AI ethics. So you need to be able to forge these connections between different subjects. That said, I think it's tempting and easy to become a dabbler. Like, you know a little bit about so many different fields, and you're unable to synthesize that together. So I think it's important to study the liberal arts, but also have something very practical that gives you returns immediately upon graduation. So if I were to go back to college, I would study either math, physics, or computer science, either as a major or a minor, and then do history, philosophy, or literature. And that combination is quite powerful. So you can study the liberal arts in any U.S. university because they encourage you to have a major, but take courses outside that as well. So you can major in a STEM subject and minor in a humanities subject, or vice versa. The proper liberal arts colleges in the U.S. typically don't, or almost invariably don't, have graduate programs. So they
Okay.
focus exclusively on undergraduate teaching as opposed to postgraduate research. If you go to some of the Ivies, their focus is on getting these professors who are going to do cutting edge research, and that's great. But sometimes the focus is not on teaching. And I think that's one of the big assets of the liberal arts colleges: Amherst, Williams, Swarthmore, Pomona. These are among the best. Harvey Mudd in California. And there's some similar programs emerging in Europe as well. Of course, India with Ashoka. So this is definitely a global trend. But my advice to young people is study liberal arts, but also have very practical, marketable skills that you can showcase off the bat.
So, a lot of Indian parents push UK over US, citing cost and duration. When is the US worth the wait and the bill?
Mhm.
And when is it not?
Got it. So I would say, I mean, the US as well, what we encourage most of our students to do is study in the US. And a lot of people want to work for a few years and then perhaps come back. And there are so many US universities, US companies that are establishing shop in India. Of course, the big names, the big tech companies, but beyond that, whether it's in tech or finance or consulting, they see the immense growth in India, and they want young people who understand India very deeply, but who also understand the US context, US culture, US business. So I think that I know that there is a disparity between the UK and the US in terms of cost and duration. But if it's a very reputed institution, I think the knowledge and the network that you gain can be a huge asset, whether you choose to stay in the US or you want to move elsewhere in the world, whether it's in Dubai or Singapore or even India. There are so many, you name an industry, there are so many people who've studied abroad and bring that additional layer of insight to the field.
You've worked with students all across the world, like in many countries. What's the one trend that you've noticed in Gen Z applicants? One that's exciting and one that's slightly worrying.
What I love is that Gen Z students are so purpose driven. They want an academic and career path that aligns with their beliefs, values, and ideals. It's not just about a paycheck. Of course, they want to do well, but in addition, they want to do good and they're very connected with what's happening around the world. So I think that's a positive. They really want to impact the environment and social issues. I think the minus is something I alluded to previously, the tendency to dabble, the tendency to jump around a lot. And see, these environmental and social issues are complex. They're no easy answers. So it takes some patience and immersion to really understand the depth of the issue and come up with sustainable solutions. And my concern is sometimes young people don't put in the time to develop the knowledge in order to create a much more scaled impact. So that would be my advice to young people. Yes, you're here to change the world, and we love that. And the world needs changing, and the world needs improving. But appreciate the complexity of these issues and really try to understand them deeply before prescribing solutions.
That was very, very precise. The way you explained the differences, like, the difference between an exciting trend and a worrisome one. Very precise. Thanks a lot for joining us in this conversation today. Thanks a lot for your time and your inputs. Thank you.